one of the big things I want to think about this year, which segues kind of what I want to talk about today, is how to get more people to come work for you. How to kind of get people in your business, recruiting them, bringing them in, because that is how you optimize your business, is getting other people to come and help you do the stuff. Yeah, it's been an interesting week in the world of marketing for me. I've been spam emailing. I mean that flippantly. I would never spam people. I've been sending a higher volume than normal of emails to my list as an experiment. And it's, been quite an interesting experiment. That sort of kept me on my toes this week. What's been a big highlight for you?
Oh, hang on. You can't leave that there. I want to dig a little bit. You said you're feeling the pressure.
People do not like being emailed a lot. Like if they're used to only hearing from you a couple of times a month and then you rock up 1 to 2 times a day, it's quite intense. It's like, me always being outside your house and being like, hi, hey, it's Vicki again. I've got this thing. Do you want to come and have a look?
It's that matter of perspective, isn't it? Because if you're doing a marketing campaign, your perspective is so warped because this is literally your thing for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, which I know is what we're going to get into a little bit. And, if you do something in the morning, then by the afternoon, that's old relatively to your week. But if you're a consumer, maybe I pick up all of your messages on Wednesday and I'm like, why she messaged me 6 times?
Yeah.
That isn't what you've done, obviously. It's difficult to get perspective. How do you go about with the goal setting? How do you know do you know on a Monday, this week will be productive if
I sell at the moment? Everything's sales driven at the moment because we're just trying to get to consistent sort of 20, 30K months at the moment. How about you?
It depends on the project. You'll know this, having worked with devs. Devs hate to work to timescales because you start off with we've got an idea, and in engineering, it's like magic. So I've got to figure out how to do the magic trick and get it all assembled together. And you want me to pull it all out of the hat last minute, and you want me to do that on command. That's quite a big ask. And that's kind of how I think of engineering. Yeah, it really depends on the project, to be honest. I find on product development, which is a lot of what I spend my day doing, I very much work on the day and how well I've achieved the task. So the task is broken down into chunks. So I look at velocity is the thing you measure, how many of those things you're getting done.
I really want to be there. I want to be where you are right now.
Yeah, I mean, bigger projects, it's easier. The way I think of this is the theory of relativity. And the good analogy for that is watching a train. So if you're stood on the train platform, as a train goes whistling past at 100 mile an hour, you hear the tracks creaking and bending, and you hear the as it goes past, and you feel the wind in your face, and it's a bit intimidating, and you can feel it in your lungs and your bones. You're like, whoa, that train's close and it's going really fast. And that's what it's like when there's loads going on and you try and juggle it. But then where the customer usually is, where the consumer usually is, and then where I guess is the place you want to live is 5 miles out, and you can kind of see this train just bobbing along the horizon, and it's just seems to hardly be moving, but it's making the same progress as if you were...
Not in my world. I don't know if we've ever discussed this, but I do agile marketing, right? So because we work in ads, we have to respond quite quickly to, when ads do well, when they don't. And we apply that to our clients as well. So we have this in the agency, we have this ambition to set an objective for the month. And then we work on that objective and we check in with our clients formally once a month about it, but keep updated. But if something happens in the middle of the month, we work with a dog supplies company, and she sells dog coats. So when the snow hit in the UK in late December, we were go, let's get our dog coat ads rolling out, right? So, I have this ambition to have this 1 hour work day. And half an hour, but it just doesn't work like that. And some days, we could be doing quite a lot, especially because in tech marketing, you solve one thing, another thing comes up. It's like whack-a-mole, and then another thing might come up and another thing. And so it just kind of doesn't work like that. So we're sales for ourselves as an agency and sales or leads for our clients. And that's just a good place to go from, really.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you're always doing those mini experiments. You'll never, ever, ever do them all. It's interesting. Well, this is kind of 4-hour work week style, like all hail Tim Ferriss, 4-hour work week. Everyone knows or should know by now how I feel about that. That's the OG book. Go read that. This is a lot of what I'm testing out on Twitter at the moment is, okay, well, there's these people that are blogging, putting content out for about an hour a day, and they've a digital product. And that's their funnel. That's as complicated as it gets. And when you look at what these people are doing, that they start to layer on the products, and yeah, there's a bit more, but from a time optimization and a stress optimization point of view, I think those businesses are very efficient, and that's a lot of what I'm testing out. It seems like a good frame.
Well, you'll be very pleased to hear, for the first time ever, I've started listening to Tim Ferriss's podcast.
The more recent ones? Or?
No, I'm dipping into the archives as well, actually. So he just did a great interview of Mark Manson, which I thought was great. And he asked some really good questions. What was interesting about that, actually, was in that interview was Mark Manson said to Tim Ferriss, "You've got a lot to answer for." Tim Ferriss was, "What?" Well, you don't know, but we have a complicated relationship. And Tim Ferriss found that quite funny. He's like, "It was all on my side. You never knew about it." And even Mark Manson, he's gone on to have all of this success as a blogger and now filmmaker and everything, wanted to kind of discover how to kind of crack the 4-hour work week, as it were. We know what the 4-hour work week means. It means how can you do the thing in your business and not have to do all the things yourself. And Mark Manson was talking about, even as he started to find success, with his blog in the early days, he still was a massive control freak. He still needed to do all the things. And actually, he now has a team around him. And Tim Ferriss spoke to him and pulled out what his team looked like and who helps with what. And I was kind of like wondering why he was going down this kind of question route. But then I was like, oh, because it's Tim Ferriss. This is what he does. This is kind of what he likes to highlight. It was a really interesting mini jolt, because I think I've moved back into a kind of phase in my own businesses where I'm like, I'll just do it all myself. I do have an outsourced team around me, and I work with another director in the business, but I just do it all myself. And actually, I think one of the big things I want to think about this year, which segues kind of what I want to talk about today, is how to get more people to come work for you. How to kind of get people in your business, recruiting them, bringing them in, because that is how you optimize your business, is getting other people to come and help you do the stuff. You can't do it on your own, as we've spoken about extensively, because you're only one person. Unless you're going to invent a cloning machine, it ain't going to happen. And generative AI is only going to do so much. You're going to need actual bums on seats to do stuff for you in your business at some point. And I think it's one of the trickiest parts of optimization. I really do, is finding the right people and to do the right things in your business. What's your experience of hiring been like in the past, Sam?
I've got a horrible story to tell around hiring, actually. Which, yeah, go on, we'll get into it.
Well, no, go on, kick off then. What's your horrible story? Because any conversation you have about hiring is sullied by that, right?
Well, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is, to be truthful. And it's also, very honest, I think, to show that, there's this thing about there's no such thing as failure, only feedback, which is true. But also, when you get that feedback, sometimes it's really bitter and hurtful and painful, and people actually, there are actual consequences to it, which kind of get glossed over when, people are doing this coachy bit. So I will give the story, but should we just set a bit of a frame to begin with? Because
sorry, Sam, I didn't mean to make you anxious there. Let's get a framework, right?
You know where my head's at, Vicki. We want to start with current state, so let's figure out, what exists currently, and then we can look at the change and measure the bit in between. I've got my engineering sort of traits shining through there, and this is a lot of what our mate Tim sort of harps on about. Is, well, there's all these paradigms we live by, we live by as a 7-day week. And there have been in history, the French had a 10-day week called a decade, which had been something different now. And I think it was the Romans maybe had an 8-day week. And then we ended up on this 7-day week, and people started to have Sunday, a holy day, off. This is some light reading on the internet, a bit of Wikipedia, a few articles. So some of them credible, BBC and the like. So they're my sources. So don't shoot me for being wrong on this, people. But yeah, Sunday, holy day for Christians, typically. So people were given the Sunday off. And then in the UK, employers started to find that some people weren't so keen on going to church and used to kick back and get leathered, have a few drinks, and then not turn in on a Monday. So then they started doing half days on a Saturday, and so that they could have a drink on a Saturday night and were more likely to turn up again on a Monday. And then, of course, that doesn't work for the Jewish religion because you've got Saturday the Sabbath, which runs from Friday night, I think, through to Saturday night. Don't know, not my area of expertise at all. And so we end up with a weekend. And then there's been lots of trials around that since. So when we're thinking about the working week, employment, what we want people to do, 4-hour work weeks, I think we should just bear in mind we've got this whole paradigm of hundreds and thousands of years that we kind of exist in. And my hiring story kind of starts there. With my first startup, we had 4 directors, a couple of overseas developers. The team was maybe 12 or 13 in total. I founded the company, CEO, in my early 20s, not really got a clue what I was doing, and spent a lot of time focused on the product because I'm a product guy and not on marketing. So made all these mistakes. And to cut a long story short, plowed a fortune into having an office available for some graduate students to come work for us with a view to employing them afterwards. Did the best I was possibly capable of. Did all this small stuff, right? Want to make sure they got all the gear, enough monitors, enough PC, notepads, teach them how to, be effective day to day. Whiteboard it out. We'll do regular team bonding sessions. We've got a pizza in every week and we do a late night session, just all this startup stuff.
Classic.
Did all of the organized fun with a capital F and a pot of money set aside to do this. Brought in all the right people, brought in lawyers, accountants, electrical engineers, software engineers. All great. It was all when you see a kid playing house and they're making cups of tea and organizing the furniture, I was playing business. I'm burning all my savings, I should add. And getting funding and, it was a good idea, engaged and getting bought and all this kind of good stuff. The hiring bit though.
Yeah.
This is where it all went wrong. As an entrepreneur, you want fellow entrepreneurs, you want people that are self-starters, you want them to be autonomous. And this is kind of quite often a crutch for poor leadership. And I definitely had some poor leadership going on. And I had someone working for me who was very junior, was good enough, not doing a great job, truthfully. And the way we should have tackled that, the way I should have tackled that, initially, there were a few sessions where she'd be working with us and just was not up to par. And got really, really upset that she couldn't just keep up with the technical stuff. And this was, I wasn't the technical lead on this particular bit of the project. And I had a few conversations with, I was like, one-to-one, go get a coffee. It's okay, you'll get there, keep going, trying to be supportive. In the background, my now wife had just got pregnant. We were moving house. I was trying to raise money. We were trying to keep, the few clients that we had really happy. I was stressed, really stressed. And messaged one of the other directors saying not the nicest things about this person in our team. I'm getting so frustrated. These are the kind of conversations that should be had, in my opinion, behind closed doors. Don't know what to do.
Yeah. How old were you at the time?
Early 20s, younger than 25. So young, very young. And I had management experience, but in corporate settings where there's very strict frameworks, and if someone's a bit rubbish or someone's really good, doesn't matter because there's a HR team, the senior managers, the programs have loads of slack in them, money's not a problem, salary is not a problem. It's a lot to deal with. And so I messaged one day, I'd had a load of questions from this person, really stuck, and I messaged the other director. I was like, I can't deal with this. I've had enough, really, really aggressive, I don't know what to do, just venting, which is exactly what you'd need sometimes. And that would have been fine. However, technology was not my friend in this instance because my personal iPhone...
Oh, no. You're going to tell me that she got the message, right?
She did. It was synced with an iPad that we had in the office for development. My personal iPad, to be fair, some issues there, and went on, saw the messages. Anyway, and that all went up in smoke. That was my worst experience. Now, there's a lot to learn from that. A lot to learn, which I think is hopefully really transparent. Bad on me for not dealing with that better. Definitely, there is a lot to be said for all these strict HR processes and performance monitoring and coaching and all the rest of it. Definitely, there is a lot to be said. Definitely should have dealt with it earlier. Shouldn't have said those things. Definitely don't put anything in writing that you wouldn't want on the front page of a newspaper. These are all well-known sayings.
But did you just not hire the right person, right?
Yes, yeah, but let's give some context to this. We were strapped for cash, doing the scrappy startup things. There's a university there saying, we need our graduates to have some projects for their masters so that they look really good. So provided you can give them the work, we can get them you at a reduced rate. They're really talented. They've done all these qualifications. Like, it's the availability of resource. And no, we didn't get the right person. But it's not as straightforward as that, is it? You know, you've got financial constraints. Like, everyone overlooks those. I'll just go hire the right person. Well, yeah, okay. You've either got to be really, really good at sales to sell someone that's like absolutely a superstar into doing something that they're getting paid a lot less than they could elsewhere. Like, you've got to appeal to them. And that takes time. You've got to go and find all those people. So you've got to have a network. You've got to have experience. You've got to have an X factor. Or you've got to have the money. And if you've got the money, is that what you're going to spend it on? Like, these are all challenges you've got to think about. And it's not like this was a, run-of-the-mill role. Like, oh, please, can you update this CRM tool? Please, can you, it wasn't just punching numbers in. This was, I need you to design something. I need you to listen to what the customers say and turn that into code on a screen over here that is a UI. Like, it's engineering, design, but it's a cross between art and engineering.
How did you determine that this person could do that job then? Because this is the point, right? Like, we're talking about optimization, right? And quite often in that space that you're talking about, we don't have the time or resource to find the right person, but we need to get the job done. And there's that risk analysis that needs to happen about just getting a bum on seat to help get the job done. But an optimized business would have assessed the real long-term capability of that person, because you invest in a person when they come into a business, right? You invest in that knowledge, you invest in that culture, and you invest in their continued kind of skills building. So could they actually do that job?
No, is the fact of the matter. They couldn't.
How long was it before you found out? Like, you got that sense of, nah, they're not quite right for this role?
About 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh.
Let's just back up a little bit. First of all, if not just to make myself feel better, to clear my conscience, I still feel to this day, this is like 10 years on, really guilty, because this was their first ever job and I should have done better by them. So I still feel terrible by that.
Public confession over.
The second thing, right? I did it all wrong. This was completely wrong to start with. So we quite often, the advice that we've harped on about is you want to go and get demand, because demand essentially equals cash flow. And if you have cash flow, then you're thinking longer term. I wasn't thinking longer term. I had a very technically complex product. So this was for use in cars that did some level of autonomy. There was like safety involved electronics in it. There was software with payments, with insurance. There was a hell of a lot of technical detail going on. And we were trying to produce a prototype. And we had engagement from the market, from big insurers saying, yeah, we'll buy it, from the consumer market saying, yeah, we'll use it. But no one had parted with any cash because we couldn't reasonably take anyone's cash off them at this point unless we took on investment, and we didn't want to do that. So we were saying, well, with this very small pot of cash we had, which was my bank account, a couple of other directors' bank accounts, can we get to a prototype level where we can either take investment or we can sell this thing? And we were trying to accelerate our way through that process by getting resource that was available to us. And the truth is, we didn't know what kind of resource we needed. We had a feel for it, but we needed to test this out. So we went out there to the market to say, well, we need people with deep technical skills. We need a premises. We need labs. So we need all this kind of thing. And a university is a great test ground for that. And the resource was there. So it isn't as straightforward as, oh, we were thinking over 10 years. We weren't. We were thinking, like, how do we get to the first sale? Like, that's all we were thinking about. And in the early days, that is all you should think about, is how do I validate demand? No, we did it all the wrong way. This was not the best way to do it. If I was doing it again today, I'd do it completely differently. Well, I wouldn't do it, probably. Like, that's the honest answer. For that business to make sense, it needed investment, it needed £1 billion outcome, and it needed lifelong commitment from me. And it didn't have any of those things. So,
yeah, I mean, from a hiring point of view, if everything relied on getting that first 1 or 2 or 10 sales in or whatever, and you'd hired the wrong person who could help you get there. The issue you face as a startup business, and and I think your example, thanks for sharing it, is like really useful here, right? Because you still have to outlay the cost of hiring that person, but you still haven't got in that sale. And so unless you've got the cash to cover that and the cash to cover their training and get their commitment, their loyalty, their investment in your business as well, you can go out of business. The sales can't come in and you can't pay people, then, that's it. I mean, I've seen that happen in many agency businesses where a big client where all the eggs were in one basket with decides to end the contract, and that contract had several account execs, designers, managers, directors or whatever assigned to it, and everyone goes, that's it. Obviously, here's your severance, see you later. That's a common story in the agency business.
We just weren't at that level. Just to answer your question, you said, how did the hiring process work? Really terribly and inefficiently. It was a recruitment fair, essentially. We turned up and said, here's our project. All you wonderful people, if you want to come work on it, apply. Got a load of applicants, interviewed a couple of them over email. It was terrible. Okay, these are the people that are available. Do you want them or not? Because that was the dynamic. University offering up cheap labor, essentially. And that's great for an established business that has some, sideline projects and whatever. This was a startup, not a good fit. For us, this was our experience. Since then, my recruitment model is completely different. If I'm going to work with someone, I give them test projects. I say, hey, I need this doing. Do it for me, give it back. Okay, bit bigger scope now. Do this, give it back. Paid. Always paid, like never ask anyone to do anything for free. I firmly believe in that. And that's how it goes. If you get a load of applicants, you have to do a bit of filtering and whatever else. But, I'm not a recruitment expert, but that's how I do it now whenever I work with anyone.
Yeah, I think in tech, engineering, definitely, you need to ensure that people know how to do the thing they're claiming to do. Only because I've personally hired hundreds of candidates over the years. I've done hundreds of interviews. I've fired people as well. I think that's the biggest suck of the hiring and people management process as well, and having to put people on review. And I hated every time I did that. I found no joy in it. If you put a job posting out there, you'll get a lot of applications, and not everyone can do the thing that they say they can do, and they can't work well under pressure. I mean, I remember we hired one guy to be a designer in our small startup agency. So it was just 8 of us, and he came to join that small team. And I mean, we were going home on time. We weren't working that hard, but there was just a lot of requests and lots of things happening. And he just got up from his desk on the Wednesday. So he'd only been there 3 days. He went a little bit like George Harrison in the Beatles in the Get Back special I just watched recently. He's like, yeah, I'm off. And he walked out the door. And we were like, oh, has he left? He just couldn't handle the environment where there was a lot of requests. As a designer, he wasn't left alone for several days to languish over ideas or whatever. But we couldn't have known that through the interview process. And it was only something we'd be able to kind of find out once he was, in doing the work. I mean, we modified and iterated our interview process after that. So we could really get a gauge of if people were used to high pressure environments, so that we weren't wasting each other's time. Because you could look for a portfolio of a designer and go, yep, you could do that work. Yep, you could do that work. But actually, can you do that work when we're asking you for the 10th time that day and the deadline's in 10 minutes, and how would you feel about that? And you can normally get a sense of whether they want to stay and finish the rest of the interview.
How did you rationalize that you wanted this person full time? Isn't it nuts? Well, I find it nuts. So this is less of a question, more of a statement. Isn't it crazy that we hire people full-time or part-time, or they're freelance? I mean, I find it crazy that there's these big projects that need doing, and then it's, if it's whatever size of the project, you come up with a resource demand. Okay, we need 3.5 people. So we'll go and recruit 4 people and we'll use half a person, or we might pull half a person from over here and we pull them in full-time. And I just think, well, hang on a minute. That might be the resource demand, but what actually needs doing? I mean, so how do you come to, we just want a designer full-time?
This is pre-pandemic, everyone wanting to be a contractor or a freelancer or have a side hustle. And in the agency world where I'm from, working at an agency was quite a aspirational career to go after. Not so much anymore, from what I understand. And once you're inside, you look around and go, why did I want to do this? After you're doing 12-hour days, 6 days a week, client requests on a Sunday night, all of that malarkey. I think it's that security of knowing that you've got enough people to cover the work. And clients want to know, are the people doing my work going to be invested in that? Because if we were signing a contract for a retainer for a year and then a client had to go through 6 different account managers, that just looks unprofessional, because each and every time that account manager is having to learn the client's way of working and their personality and the data on the account and all of this stuff from scratch. And it's quite frustrating for a client to be like, oh, who are you? I've already mentioned this to John, but John's gone, right? So there's that reliability of having the kind of same personnel show up again and again.
So to break that down, it makes sense for a company because the company knows that it can deliver on its contracts and ultimately make money. Cool. Get that. Makes sense for a client in one perspective, because the client knows they're going to get some level of consistency. And I say that as like an assumption. That's not a fact. Hopefully they're going to get a level of consistency through going to a single company, like that has a single legal entity. But the people can still churn, so there's a risk there that they could get inconsistency. But they have a contract in place which in theory gives them some legal cover. But does that make sense for anybody else? I mean, so if you're a person at a company, why would you do that?
Well, I hear you, by the way, because having launched my agency business, all I know is full-time hires, bums on seats, right? So the first couple of months after I launched, I put a job spec out there, full-time job role. Who wants to come and work for my little agency? This is what we're all about. Loads of applications, hundreds, in fact. Too overwhelming to respond to everyone. And I realized we were hiring, I think after a while, not for skill set, but for personality. So we wanted the right person for the right role, who would be like willing to kind of be trained, who'd be happy to work remote as well. And the idea was that they could be around 9 to 5, cover all the hours when I couldn't, if I had to go and do the school run, talk to clients, when I wouldn't be able to. And we brought someone in, but they didn't last, actually, to be fair. They lasted like less than 8 weeks. And I think we haven't hired full-time since then. We've only hired contractors since then. And the reasons why are because when we had a full-time person, we expected them to go off and find things to do. But unless I was delegating those things, they didn't know what to do. It was really difficult in a kind of remote role. And that person sort of confessed to sometimes, I'm just sat here with nothing to do. And we're like, oh, but there's nothing happening right now between 2 and 3, because our clients are away, or, we've done all the things that we need to do. There was never any tangible work that they could do. So they sort of had to find busy work. So essentially we were paying them to do busy work sometimes, like learning a new thing or going off and following a training course or something like that.
Go learn about HubSpot.
Yeah. Go and look at some YouTube videos, or something like that. And actually, that just seemed very wasteful for the business overall, because they weren't engaged. The pressure on me to make sure that every hour I was paying someone had billable work coming out of it was really difficult, because we chose to run a remote business where all our clients are remote, all of the staff are remote. The work can be carried out at any time of day. It doesn't have to be in working hours. We're available to talk to our clients in working hours, but you can manage an ad account or put creative or do design in the evening. I don't care, as long as that thing gets done. But the old working ways were put on this remote working model. And I found it was going to be much easier to rely on contractors and agree a set amount of work. We did time track for a bit just to get a sense of the amount of work that we could give a contractor, but we've stopped time tracking now. We only do outputs. So we give them a thing to do. They go and do that thing. We check the quality of that thing. and now it's done. And it's much more economical for the business. Everyone's happy. They get to do the work when they want to do it. We all agree a time to check in, and there's less pressure to make every single hour between 9 and 5 like billable, essentially.
I think it comes back to this question, that we've tackled a few times. Like, what are you optimizing for? Because kind of like you, I remember in my early career, you were saying it's quite aspirational to be in an agency. Well, I was in this engineering office, and honestly, I could not describe the elation I had to you. I was working 12 or 14-hour days and traveling an hour either end of the day, working hard, and I could spot the people that were promoted a level or had a project management position. And I used to always joke, like, well, you can tell who's in charge by how shiny the suit is. If the suit's really shiny and the tie is really shiny, they're like project control, project management, customer facing. If it's a bit dulled, probably a senior engineer. And I used to look at these guys and girls and be like, one day that could be me one day. And I'd watch, members of the government coming in and delegates from the MOD and think, oh my goodness, like, this is amazing. And at that time, that was great. I had nowhere else to be. I wanted my weekends and that was all. But then fast forward a little bit, your priorities start to change. And I think we see it because we're in this stage in our lives where we've got kids and we've got family, and our time, like you said, you wanted someone there 9 to 5 because maybe you want to do the school run or whatever else. You're happy to work evenings and early mornings. But I think we're now seeing that in different demands in whatever the generation is that's 20 odd years old now. They're going, well, maybe I don't want to stay in one place at one time, and maybe I want to work different hours. And they've got these aspirations, which I think for me, in 2007, reading the 4-Hour Work Week, that was the first time my view of the world got shattered. And I just want to highlight what you were saying there about the optimization of it. I think I've said this before on the pod. There was a process that we had to do as a team. There was maybe 10 of us, maybe 12. Can't remember the exact numbers, but it used to take us about a quarter, take us about 3 months. And we used to do it 4 times a year. And we used to deliver this piece of software. If I was to estimate, these are my views, not my own, no inside info here, but if I was to estimate, that contract was probably worth £10 million a year-ish. And we wanted to work on more important stuff because we were working with fighter pilots and this kind of thing, and they wanted extra capability, and the guys we were working with said, well, if you could do this little change, it would give us this extra push over here, it'd give us this extra ability. So we were there going, well, we really want to work on this, but there's no extra money. What if we could do this more efficiently? And where we got to was that we broke down every single task that happened into line by line on a spreadsheet. And we built a bit of software and a dashboard that showed how this project was going. And we managed to get this 12-week process and all these people involved down to one day. Like, that's where we got it down to. And we gave it a snazzy name and gave it a snazzy logo and got awards for it, and lots of pats on the back and lots of recognition. But at that point, something in my mind fundamentally changed, and COVID solidified it, is that essentially, for the most part, as knowledge workers, I think is like the big catch-all phrase for everyone that does agency work, engineering, design, video editing, copywriting, ads, anything to do with a computer, data analytics, whatever it is you do, research. We're plugged into this machine via a keyboard and a mouse. And every time we do a task, we're ticking off this line on a spreadsheet. And we were working really inefficiently doing that over 12 weeks. And we didn't get paid anymore for getting it down for a day. Like, didn't change. That didn't change, but the company got all that efficiency. And I think in the freelancing and contract world, and essentially the remote world, I'm going to say now, we're all broken down into that interface. So if you can break your business down into those line items, you suddenly not only can improve the efficiency of an outcome, but you can start to improve your hiring process, because no longer you're going, well, we need someone that's got this generic set of skills. It's like, well, no, I know that 4 times a year, we've got this task that needs doing. And that task is broken down into talk to a customer, burn a CD, test a piece of software, like very, very discrete skills. And you can get a specialist in that's very good at that. And then if you need someone to fill in the gaps, well, you can get a generalist in. And you can say, your job, by the way, is to move this process along. You're kind of a project manager on steroids that can do all this technical stuff as well, And I think the world has dramatically changed. And I wonder, I still don't think we have the language for this. We still talk about the same work week, still a 7-day week, it's still 5 days a week. People are still on salary,
I know. But there are good people out there doing the good work. Bruce Daisley, who wrote The Joy of Work, and he has his own podcast. I was listening to him talking on the Recruiting Future podcast this week, talking about how you can't replicate things that happen hybrid and expect that in an office and vice versa. Like the new way of working, and people have pushed back on this, is hybrid working or nothing. And this is just unheard of. When I was doing hiring 5-10 years ago, not even 5 now. Oh my God, I'm getting where the pandemic feels like it was last year still in my head.
How long ago was it? 2020? 3 years. Jesus, we're in 2023.
So when I was doing hiring 10 plus years ago, right? If someone had come in and said, yeah, I really want the job and everything, but I need to work from home 1 day a week, we'd have been like, yeah, don't worry about it. Like, you've got to be here, bums on seat in the office. And that's turned on its head from what I understand now. Just kind of reading around like kind of recruitment influencers and whatnot on LinkedIn, is that is a non-negotiable for Gen Z, for millennials now. It's like, no, we have to have some type of work from home. And it looks like the findings from the 4-day work week that kind of happened in 2022 and kind of bleeding into 2023 as well, is that it's quite positive. A lot of companies are signing up to a 4-day work week without loss of pay as well, because they can see the benefits of that. And then you've got like Dropbox, right? Dropbox are trying to show how you can use the office for things other than having people in there, turning it into a hybrid co-working space, turning it into a storage space. I love the fact that kind of Dropbox are doing this as well. So there are mavens, there are people doing the good work. It is happening, but it hasn't got to mainstream working culture yet, I don't think.
Yeah, so there's so much to unpack here, isn't there? Let's start with the bums on seats thing. Very similar story. I mean, in the domains that I operate in, there's some security classification. So it's kind of like, well, you can't do a lot of this stuff outside of this secure environment.
We all promise, if we're listening right now, that we won't tell anyone what you've just said, Sam, okay? We all promise.
Well, that's not classified, is it? But like, there's a lot of that. And there's a lot of culture around there. And a guy that I used to work for, his first name, John, doesn't matter what his surname is. Awesome guy.
John Tappy Nose. Yep. Wink, wink.
Yeah, not his real name. He would not. Grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s. That's where he got his stripes. There's a different culture there around work. And he would not have, he was not into part-time unless really had to. Remote? No. No way, no how. And I remember pushing for like a 3-day week with him, and he was going, well, boy, I don't understand, and we tried it for a bit, but then other people got upset about it, and there's this whole paradigm, and it is just a mental block around what is and isn't possible. But now we see that, well, COVID just suddenly went, oh yeah, we can do everything remote pretty much. And okay, it's not one way or the other, but I still don't think anybody's specialized in what's optimal, because fundamentally the system's broken in that we don't track tasks very well. We don't track productivity very well. And on the office point, like, the office was never designed to be this cubicle office environment that is so prevalent. And still, even on modern offices, it's still kind of designed that way, that people are all separated out. I'm sure it's designed in like the 1930s, 1940s. There's a podcast, we'll have to reference it. It's 99%, I think it might be the 1% of things you don't see. And when the office was initially conceived, it was designed out that you should have specialist environments for specialist activities, and they should be free flowing and allow people to discuss and be expressive and draw and write. And you would have stations for writing, stations for drawing, stations for meeting and discussing data. And then I want to say it's like the 70s or 80s. I could be getting this completely wrong. It's all from memory from a podcast. But the point is, some commercial business people got their hands on it and went, yeah, but we can punch out corner desks by the dozen by the boatload, and we can sell these into these emerging office environments where these computers and things are getting more prevalent. And so, the cubicle office space emerged because it was a commercial incentive. It was never this is a really productive way to work. And it's just never been revisited. It's just never been revisited.
Okay, agency person here. Open plan, darling. Open plan with graffiti on the wall and sofas and bean bags. Yeah, that was the norm, right? And it used to drive developers, because I come from digital agencies, right? Used to drive developers mad to be on the same floor as the sales team. And case in point, I worked at Brandwatch, big software company in Brighton that got bought, and developers were on one floor. They weren't even allowed to mix with sales and marketing. So they were on their own massive open plan floor. And you went down there as a salesperson because you had to go and have a chat with a product person or whatever. Deathly quiet, very quiet.
Like a library.
Yeah, the sales floor. And it was just like boom, boom, music, people being pumped up. You got the coffee station.
Wolf of Wall Street style.
Yeah, well, not quite, but a little bit more nerdy. But always complaints in open plan from developers about, Vicki, can you just shut up? I've got to sell. So finding the happy place there.
I think we're saying the same thing, is that you need specialist workstations for specialist activities. Like if you need to weld something, you want a welding desk. You don't want a woodworking desk or a crocheting desk, do you?
Okay, question then, right? So you're recruiting somebody and they have a list of demands, okay, in order to do a really good job. Because that's another thing that you've got to get right in the beginning to make sure that this hire is optimal, right? So we've had it over the years. Hiring someone, agency, you get a Mac, you get the latest phone so you can call your clients, you get a nice ergonomic desk and chair to sit at, you hear all the perks as well. So, here's a gym membership so you can stay healthy. We do Taco Tuesdays. We go and do a big bar night with the boss, beat the boss kind of thing on once a month. Here are the things to kind of make your job nicer, right? When we get to developers, sometimes it'd be like, no, I can't have a Mac. I need a custom Unix machine. Oh, okay, we can set that up for you. That's okay, And I need to have this particular chair. Okay, well you can have that chair as long as it's going to make you do the job and everything. And it'd be quite common to give into a list of demands. That said, on the other side of the coin, which I've never been on, thankfully, but just talking to friends, horror stories of like going to be an editor and being given a Windows PC machine, really old one, no monitor, a cracked copy of Adobe Premiere to edit on.
These aren't proper companies, are they? If they're not using kosher stuff.
No, for sure. But you've kind of got to give the right equipment, the right perks to people as well. And so there's that kind of hidden investment, I think, when you're thinking about optimizing the role. You need to invest in that person more than just their salary in the beginning.
Again, I mean, we haven't addressed the elephant in the room, which is hiring versus freelance. Let's stick on that hiring route, because this isn't a problem with freelance. It's because you give them the problem. I say, well, depending on the setup, but in my opinion, it shouldn't be a problem. Because you're paying for an out with freelance. You're going, I want this outcome. I'd like to buy one of those outcomes, please. Just make it happen. Whereas if you're bringing someone in internally, so an agency that I did some operational stuff at, the best approach that I saw was where you empower people to help themselves. And it's a lot about the culture is, no, I'm employing you and giving you that security wrapper. But what I want in return is for you to come and solve all these problems for me. You tell me you need some tools for a job. Sure, I'll facilitate that. But here's a budget, and you figure out what you need in that budget. You can have it, but that's on you. There's this story, isn't there, about Amazon where, they didn't have desks originally. You had to find your own desk, and they would all steal the doors. And there's that gaming company, isn't there, where all the desks are on wheels. You get given a box, essentially, to put your desk on, and the idea is you can wheel it around to go work with whoever. I think there's a lot to be said for empowering people to make those decisions for themselves. Yeah, there's a budget there. If you want to go to the gym, go to the gym. But if you want to just go for a run around the park at lunch because that's your vibe, do that. I think when you see people that go perk shopping for businesses, so you look at like government jobs in the UK, okay, well, what's the sick like, and how much are they contributing to the pension, and do they do term time working and all these things? I think, yeah, fine. Like if that's an approach, But if you want an optimized business, which let's agree the government is not an optimized organization because it operates with different incentives and different, then you need to build your recruitment and your onboarding around optimization. And optimization is ultimately reducing the number of touch points in a decision to get the optimum outcome. And quite often that's just let someone make a decision on their own autonomously.
I mean, this is why then, to kind of carry on your point, why I decided to move to hiring freelancers only. And I've had a really good experience the past year working with freelancers. Like if there's a really niche subject or topic that I need help with, I've got a trusted freelancer that I have used. I've tried them out on a test job. I normally hire via Upwork as well. Not that I'm asked to say that, by the way, but it's just a really trusted platform for me.
Have we got an affiliate link for that, Vicki?
So I go into Upwork, I put in the keyword of the skill that I need help with. I will look in the UK, but I'll look overseas as well. With tech, I tend to look in countries that speak English quite well as well. So Pakistan, India, some Eastern European countries, and the Philippines. Usually quite good and competitive with their rates as well. Do a test job, see what it's like working with them, see what the response time is, see what I was like to work with them as well, because I might find myself like you getting really frustrated with lots of questions, right? Just seeing what the overall experience is like. And then if it works, then that's it. I've got a trusted freelancer. I never haggle on their rate ever, ever. Like if they've advertised the rate, I pay it because I think you start as you mean to go on Upwork. And the downside of hiring tech freelancers is that you can churn through them really quickly. And having someone who understands your way of working, understands your business is really important. So yes, there is a risk there because you're only hiring that person a few hours at a time to do a particular job or a particular task at a time, right? But you want the ability to go back and use that same person again and again, and have them want to work with you and have them think, oh yeah, they pay really well and it's a breeze to work with them. They're not a nightmare client. So that you do keep that continuity and that consistency. And I think that's really important. And it comes from not like crushing them on rate from the very beginning. I think if you pay well and pay their market rate, then you give them the opportunity to go and do the job that they say they can do for that market rate as well. And what happens, after a while, you'll find they'll start discounting for you if you buy in bulk, right? Or if you say, can you commit to the next month? They'll find a way to do you a deal because they like working with you. So that for me has been really successful. And I have no qualms working with offshore contractors at the moment. And this is going to be a bit controversial, Sam, because we pay market rate, we pay what they ask. In their local country, that is what they need to have a good living, right? So we honour that. I know I could be paying a lot more in the UK. I could keep that cash in the UK as well. But something has happened. And I don't know whether it's the explosion of the freelance gig economy or not. But I find I get a better result culturally with offshore people. I don't know what it is. I have a couple of people who freelance for me at the moment, who I love and adore, who are based in the UK. But for specific small jobs, developers, analytics setup, that type of thing, I want people who can just go do the job, who aren't going to fit me in. Or I might be able to fit you in. Or are you sure you want that? Yeah, like not questioning the job. They just go and do it. And I think, I don't know, I feel like I'm betraying my country here, but there seems to be a resistance to wanting to do the work. Sometimes the prices are much higher, and so it makes that negotiation feel harder. And I don't know if that's a cultural thing, because, for example, dealing with contractors in India, the boss is king, right? The boss knows what's what. You don't question the boss, which is frustrating to work with offshore people in India, because you want them to do some independent thinking, maybe push back on your ideas. They never do sometimes. They do exactly what's in the brief.
Yeah, let's save ourselves from some heat. So we're not generalizing any culture or place, we're saying, in our experience, using outsourced companies in India, your experience was that they don't push back or like have the creative. I totally get that. And we're not saying British people are lazy. We're saying, in our experience, it's much easier to work with some off.
Just to be clear.
Yeah. And I'm right there with you. I've got development teams that are dotted around the place. There's one that I do a lot of work with in Ukraine. Very, very, very pleased to work with those guys at the moment. Language is a barrier. However, their technical capability is unreal. And their execution, when they say they're going to do something, they go off and do it. Even when they're getting power outages and all the other challenges that come with being in Ukraine at the moment. I would reflect that right back to say that overseas agencies are very, very competitive. But I also have that internal conflict, which is, hang on a minute, I'm quite patriotic. I want the UK to be great. I want the UK to be brilliant. But if it's not here in the UK...
Mama's got to run a business, Sam.
yeah, you've got to get it done. So it's tough, isn't it?
No, the case I can think of is I went trawling for contractors. I thought I'm going to find someone who's based in the UK. Went and got a short list of 5, messaged all 5, and no one got back to me. Which, okay, maybe they don't use Upwork. Oh, okay, maybe. And then one got back to me and was like, yeah, I'm not sure I could do that. And I'm like... If you looked at my profile, you could see I'm a really big hirer, and maybe you might not be able to do the thing I'm asked, but there might be opportunities to do other stuff with me. But there wasn't really any interest. And I don't know whether that's because we've empowered our freelancers enough to really pick and choose their jobs in the UK, which is, by the way, thumbs up, great, good for you, right, that you can do that. But as someone who is trying to grow a small mid-sized business, I just want someone to get back to me and go, no, I can't do that. But I know someone who could, or yeah, I can do that. My husband, who works in a world so opposite to this, he's a carpenter, he works in the event industry. If someone rings him up and says, can you do this job? Because, by the way, they ring each other up in this world. They don't email or, do those things. They call each other up. He's like, yeah, Josh, can you do this job? And he goes, no, I can't do it, mate. But I know someone else, and they'll pass each other on, and it just gets done in that world.
Not on a smartphone either.
No, like a Nokia 3210, yeah.
Yeah, not even a 3310.
So, yeah, I'm definitely feeling that the kind of benefit of investing in people, offshore people around the world. And I'll finish on this point. I've found it and still find it really difficult to foster and create a culture with a remote team. I do. There's no water cooler moment. There's no let's go to the pub after work. I find it really difficult to bond with everyone. I try and force them, and lovingly force everyone onto the odd Zoom call so we can chit chat and everything. But I'm really mindful that that's free time that they might not have. And it's hard to get everyone into one place. We failed at Christmas because the snow hit and people couldn't travel. That is a big missing component of running a remote business. And so if that is the case, does it matter that you're hiring people offshore? I
was going to say that. I work with UK-based teams now, and maybe because of an absolute essential necessity, they see each other once, twice, maybe 3 times a year. And because I think that's part of the efficiency saving of freelancers. Well, yeah, okay, it would be great to have a relationship with you, but you know what? If I've got relationship time, I'd rather invest that with my family or my friends who, with all due respect, are my actual friends and my actual family. I don't just work with them. And you're really nice and nothing against you. And, if I'm forced to sit with you 40 hours a week, I'm sure we'll develop a bond. But I'm not. Therefore, and it's the same with the HR stuff. HR stuff, really, really good, really, really useful, good to protect people, all for it. But with a freelancer, you don't have that overhead because they can fire themselves. They either do the work or don't, and it's straightforward. And that's the relationship. I think it's a difficult topic to unpick.
Well, yeah, and it's certainly not not something for us to talk about as optimization experts, but I do worry for the kind of Gen Z leaving university and coming out into the workplace because, where do they go to have their drunken after work Friday night party, and that kind of kinship and kind of bonding, and that's what makes for great startup teams. Elon Musk is a great example of someone who's come from that dorm room mentality kind of startup. Mark Zuckerberg is the same, to the point actually where Elon Musk has come full circle and got rid of the workforce at Twitter and got people living there at the moment in their offices in San Francisco, right, to kind of foster that work all day, work all night, let's ship fast kind of mentality. That's harder to do. That is harder to do when you're remote.
I don't think it's a one size fits all, is it? Because it'd be ridiculous to say there is one efficient way to work. In the beginning portion of your career, if you're looking over a 30 or 40 year period, it's very efficient for the first 4, 5, maybe even 10 years of your career to invest a lot of time in making a lot of mistakes and figuring out what does and doesn't work, because you then carry that accelerated learning curve and the subsequent efficiency throughout your career, which is why you then see people sort of in the 30s, 40s start to stagnate as they have other priorities and they're just turning the handle on the things they learned over the last 10 years, which I think is a lot of what we do. We still try and keep with it and, but I'm not doing 16, 18-hour days, 5 days a week anymore. Like, no way, no how. It's not happening. But in my early career, it was really worth it.
But the kids don't want to do 18-hour days. They want good mental health at work. They don't want to be burnt out, and I think that ship sailed with that culture. It could come back, but I can't see it hanging around at the moment.
Yeah, it'd be interesting because if you don't have people who are willing to do unreasonable things in unreasonable ways in certain domains of their life, I'm not saying everyone has to do it, then where do you get that distribution curve of, you flatten that out and you start to not get the, really extreme that give us the texture and the lattice work that is, the world. You need the people that are doing weird things to make the world go around, in my opinion. If we all end up very vanilla, if we all end up very optimized on this one axis, then where's the creativity come from? And yeah. Do we want to wrap up and kind of summarize what we've spoken about then? We've got a couple of recommendations.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I do recommend, if anyone wants to listen to Bruce Daisley's podcast and read his books as well, to do so, because he's just really interesting to listen to about workplace culture, and he's kind of a proper pioneer in kind of trying to change.
So what's his name? Bruce? Bruce?
Yeah, Bruce Daisley. I used to sit next to him.
Oh, really?
At EMAP when I worked there. He was my boss. And then he went on to do great things and be VP of Twitter. And now he's a culture and workplace pioneer, if you like.
A serious dude then.
Yeah, definitely. And we also talked about Mark Manson as well. And he's got a movie coming out. And I'd highly recommend, if anyone doesn't know who we're talking about, is to kind of go and look him up. I also found, by the way, just in my delving around, because we can't do this episode without just talking a tiny bit about AI, the coolest tool in the world. It's called Olivia. Have you heard of Olivia?
No. Go on. Tell me about Olivia.
So if you head to paradox.ai, it's your AI assistant for hiring, and she's called Olivia.
Is that an AI generated image they've used as well? Because you can't see her hands, because that's a lot of
I think so. It's basically generative AI, again, conversational, and she'll do the work for you. She'll automate, answer screen, schedule, onboard, and help you hire faster. So, if hiring is a kind of a big issue in people's worlds because of the time needed to be spent, you can just get AI on that, guys.
Crikey, look at some of the clients they've got. McDonald's, Amazon, General Motors, Nestle. Gee whiz.
Yeah. So that could be the future of where recruitment's going. So, if you are finding it quite difficult to kind of get out there, find people and screen them, just use AI to do that.
When you said that was a lot of the time, was screening. Interesting. Workday. Wow, some big names. A couple of takeaways. One, you've got to get very clear about what you want. So get your requirements down, what tasks you want them to do, when do you want them to work, what outcomes you're looking for, and then also what you are willing to do to facilitate that. Do you want to give them all the tools? Do you want to give them money for gym memberships and whatever else? And then that ultimately boils down to, your requirements plus what you can actually give to someone to incentivize them as to whether maybe you want to make a freelance or permanent decision as well. And I know we didn't really get into the tactical practical. We did a lot of storytelling and mulling over the problems, but hopefully that was useful. If anyone wants to subscribe and get notifications for the podcast,
like this YouTube channel, subscribe to this YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified.
Or subscribe on Spotify or Apple or wherever you are. And if you want to say hello to us on social media, Vicky, you are...
Hey, Vicki Jaxx.
On Twitter, and I am at Jaxx, JAXX_Sam. That's Jaxx_Sam on Twitter as well. I would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening. Please let us know what you think of the episode. Would really appreciate your feedback, genuinely.